guys, today the vlog is coming from the absolutely amazing Tollymore Forest down in County Down, just outside Newcastle. And the plan was today was to come down and shoot some autumn colours. I'm running a workshop here next week, so I thought I would come down, do a little bit of a recce. It's a bit of a pilgrimage every year. I always come down here for autumn, just because the forest is absolutely amazing. Just thought I would try a few long exposures down in this little section here of the stepping stones. I would reckon I'm probably still maybe about 7 days, maybe 10 days too early. But yeah, it's an absolutely gorgeous location down here. So yeah, let's get cracking. So just to talk very, very quickly about my camera settings whenever I'm shooting any kind of waterfalls or rivers. Usually what I'm trying to do is create a really lovely blur to the water. So to do that, we need to use a long exposure. At the moment, my camera settings, I'm shooting at as low an ISO as I can, because obviously we want to make sure that we have a really clean image. We don't want an awful lot of noise in the image, so I'm shooting down at ISO 50. My aperture is set to f11, which, to be honest, seems to be the really sweet spot of the 16 to 35mm Canon lens that I have. So at the moment, the shutter speed is in around about 5 seconds. I'm not using any ND filters because it is quite dark in here. I am getting quite a long exposure naturally, so that's good. All I have on the front of the lens is a circular polarizer, which, if there's one filter that you really need to be using whenever you're shooting waterfalls or this kind of thing here, it's definitely going to be a polarizer. Basically what it's going to do is cut out all of the glare from the water, and it's also going to make the colours really, really pop. What I also have on the front of the lens is an ND grad as well. Just because there's a little bit of light just coming through, the sun's kind of bursting through the trees, so I'm just trying to make sure I pull back as much detail in that as I can. So at the moment my exposure is in and around, kind of fluctuating between about 5 seconds and 10 seconds. What I'm finding is I need to be very, very careful not to actually blow out all the detail in the water. So I'm just pushing my exposure just enough, just until I start to see the highlights start to clip, and then I'll probably just pull it back in a little bit. So again, a 5 second exposure here is actually keeping all of the details in the highlights, but what I'm finding is the rest of the scene is actually looking quite dark, so I'm going to knock it up maybe another second. Again, I'm using one of the remote releases as well, just to make sure that I'm not touching the camera at all during the exposure. So when I was talking earlier there just about the importance of using a circular polarizer, if you just watch the screen and just see the effect the polarizer has as I rotate it. So at the moment the polarizer isn't really doing much. You can still get quite a lot of glare and reflection off the water. But if you keep an eye on the bottom right hand side of the screen, as I rotate the polarizer, you can see how it darkens it and it cuts out all of the glare. You'll also notice as well that it gives a little bit more punch to the colours. So you can just see, this would be pretty much it without the polarizer, with pretty much no effect. And then just as I rotate it round, you can see just how it's cutting out the glare. So definitely one of the must-buy things for this kind of photography is definitely a circular polarizer. It's so useful. So this is the kind of shot that I'm getting here, guys. This one here is a 6 second exposure at f11 ISO 50. So I've just finished up at the stepping stones, so I'm going to head round now to probably one of the nicest bridges, in my opinion, down in the forest, is Foley's Bridge. I was here last year and absolutely beautiful, colours were amazing. So just make my way down that way now, and yeah, we'll see how we get on. There seems to be a very fine window of opportunity whenever you're shooting autumn colours. You want to time it so that the colours are lovely in brown and golden. So there's loads of reds and yellows and browns, but also that the leaves are actually still on the trees, because if you leave it too long and everything just falls onto the floor of the forest, then the trees look really bare and it can kind of look a little bit more like a wintry scene. So there is a fine window, I think, and it seems to change from every year. So yeah, definitely going to get some nice images today, but definitely plan will be to come back maybe in about a week's time or 10 days and see what it's like then. So I've almost made it down to Foley's Bridge here. There's a couple of angles that you can shoot it from, and what I might actually do is just head back round to where I was last year just and see what the colours are like. It actually looks really nice. There's quite a lot of sun hitting the trees, just overhanging the bridge here, so I'm hoping that actually might work in my favour. So I'm going to head over this way just behind me here and then shoot back into the sun and hopefully maybe get some lovely autumn colours in the sunlight. So what I might actually do, because I've shot here before, I might actually just take a little trip down there just to maybe try and get a little bit closer to the water and see what we're going to get. So just going to leave all the gear up above. There's no point in bringing everything down if there's no need to. So what I'm realising already is just by moving down to a slightly lower viewpoint, we have actually lost most of the bridge, if you can see here. So we're actually only going to be getting part of the bridge in, which isn't really what I'm looking for. Although the view back around this way is actually really nice too, if we just had a little bit more autumn colour. So what I might actually do is head back up and across and see. There may be another little point just across here, which may be able to get me a little bit closer. So yeah, I reckon this is pretty good in here. So we were up here somewhere before, so I've actually just come down the side of this. There's quite a fairly decent path down. Maybe try and get along the edge of the water here a little bit, so that we've actually got a slightly lower viewpoint, which might work really, really well. Just hopefully make the bridge look a little bit more impressive if we get down really, really low and then actually shoot up the way. So again, what I'm going to be hoping to be doing here, guys, is using the flow of the river and the bridge probably off to one side. Probably, I'm looking at it here, it's probably going to be off to the left hand side, and then get the lovely colours and the sunlight on the right hand side as well. And again, we're going to be trying to get a nice long exposure just to blur the water as well, which should hopefully work out really, really well. So let's go and get the gear and get down here and get set up. So we've made our way down to the water's edge here. Just before we take a shot, one of the things I would definitely recommend, if you're in the market for a tripod, try and get one that allows you to spread the legs like that, because it is so useful whenever you're in really, really uneven ground, just to be able to get a really, really firm footing for your tripod, and just being able to be really, really flexible. So definitely that's worth looking at. So the shot we're going to do down here is pretty straightforward really. We're using the lovely curve of the bridge. We're putting it over on the left hand side, and then we're just allowing the flow of the water just to kind of run in below and then out the bottom right hand side. We have a little bit of white water here, so what I'm trying to do is make sure when I'm working out my exposure that I'm not losing too much of the highlights in the water, because the water does tend to blow out really easily. What I've also done again is using the circular polarizer, and I've also stacked a couple of ND grads just to try and pull back a little bit of detail in the, I was going to say the sky, but I guess there's really not much sky in it, but the tops of the trees, because the sun is quite bright in places, so it's kind of shafting through. So yeah, it looks quite good. At the moment, ISO is set to 50 and f11, and we're in and around about 2 seconds. So I'm just going to fire off another one here. And what really I'm looking for here is to try and retain most of the highlights. So I'm not sure if you can actually see that or not, but there's a little bit blinking up in the top where the sky is, which I'm not overly bothered with because I've probably cropped down on that anyway. There's just a tiny little bit blinking in the water. So what I might actually do here is get my autofocus set up, flick it over onto manual focus, and then actually bracket some exposures. So where I'm shooting here around 2 seconds, I'll use that as my base one, and then I'll maybe actually take another shot maybe around about a second, just to retain a little bit more detail in the highlights, and then maybe up the shutter speed and maybe shoot one in and around about 4 seconds or 6 seconds, just to lift a little bit more detail in the shadows. And then I always have the option, if the detail isn't in the one file, then I can bring them into Photoshop and actually mask them in and blend them so that we have a really well balanced and a really well exposed image. That would be the way I prefer to do it, as opposed to try and HDR. Sometimes I find the HDR software is just too fake and just the image looks really, really overly processed. So what we want is a really realistic look here. So I'm going to fire off firstly the 2 second, and then we'll go 1 second. So just checking that, so flicking it across onto manual focus. The reason I'm doing that is just so that the focus point doesn't change, because if it was going to change and then I try to stack the images, it's going to be really off. So that's our 2 second one done. So I'm going to go down to a second. So this one should be quite dark, but obviously it's going to be retaining the highlight detail. And then I'm just going to increase the shutter speed up to 4 seconds. And hopefully that should give us enough scope to work with. Yeah, that looks about right. So one of the things whenever you're using ND grads, you may be thinking, what actually is the point in using them? Do they actually benefit you? Can you not just do this afterwards in Photoshop? And I guess, yeah, maybe you can, but if I just let you see the scene here, this is the scene with the polarizer and the ND grad, so you can see the effect of the polarizer as I rotate it, the way it's cutting out a lot of the glare. And whenever I actually move the grads, you'll see what the grads are actually doing here. So basically, if I was trying to have the foreground and the river and the water all perfectly exposed, you can see what's going to be happening to the top half of the image where the trees are and where the sun's actually hitting it. So, and this applies as well to whether you're shooting outside of a forest, or if you're shooting a seascape or a sunset or a sunrise, or you're up in the mountains, whatever. If I just pull the grads down into position, you can see the difference that it has made. It's too far. So you can actually see there that that looks like a much more balanced image. That's actually probably more like what my eye is actually seeing at the minute. And if we just move it up again, you can see the difference. So definitely ND grads, I'm using some Lee soft edge ND grads, who I think are actually the best in the business. I find them to have really, really high quality and very, very little colour cast in them. They're very neutral. So yeah, definitely big thumbs up for Lee when it comes to the ND grads.